where was that particular item? Okay, let me box that off. And it's really easy to find the footage for, that particular event because something was added or removed. It's usually pretty simple to find that way as well.
Nice. Bruce stole my sandwich again. Come on, Bruce. Jeez. Bruce, if you're listening, sorry. Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us again for another session of the In the Trenches Roundtable. Today's session is going to be another feature focus. Today specifically, where we're going to be diving into motion detection, motion recording, all things motion. Super excited about this one, especially because it comes up all the time. It's like one of the first, I bet you if you Googled most asked questions about security cameras, motion would be on the top of that list. So I'm excited. We've got another awesome panel of experts here with us today. We've got, of course, our technology manager and director, James Campbell.
Hey, everybody.
Awesome. We've got our support manager, Michael Bell.
Hello.
Beautiful. And last but certainly not least, we have our CEO, Matthew Nellerenden.
Hey, everybody.
Great. And I'm Ben, your host here for these In the Trenches Roundtable. Again, super excited. So I think first we should probably start with what is motion detection and do all of our cameras actually offer it?
Yeah, I guess I'll grab that. So motion detection, as it implies, is a technology that detects motion within a camera. So it is supported on all of our cameras. So any camera that you get is going to have this basic motion detection function. And to dive a little deeper into it, the way this sort of works is we've got the camera is looking not necessarily for specific things. It's not looking for a person when it's using motion detection. It's not looking for vehicles or anything specific like that. So any kind of extreme pixel changes, or any pixel changes is how it actually works, will set it off. So to go into that, I guess a little bit more detail is, imagine that you're in outside and you get a whole bunch of trees waving in the wind. That's going to detect motion for that camera. So it's a very basic function, and it is supported on all of our cameras.
Does the camera only send its video feed to the recording device if motion is detected, or like how does that even work in the first place?
I can tell you that's based on the recording schedule that's preset within the recorder. So I would say a good 99% of our customers, they record either full-time or motion. It's kind of split between the two on those two. But you do have to set that schedule and of course set the settings for the motion to pick up what you're looking to pick up.
Just to add on to that, out of the box, all of our NVRs are set to record constantly. Mm-hmm. And the motion is set up, but it's generally set up on 100% coverage and 100% sensitivity. So I think that probably brings us into talking about what you can do to actually change motion potentially.
Well, what are those terms? Motion sensitivity. What does that even mean?
So sensitivity is going to either reduce or increase the amount of detections you're going to get, in a simple term. The grid, on the other hand, you can see here, the grid is based on the detection area. So basically anywhere there's a grid within this box, in this live view image we're seeing, it's going to detect motion. So there's plenty of situations where you want to tweak that motion grid. Imagine you have across the street and you don't want to see when people are going in and out of your neighbor's building. You want to keep it centered on your own building. So you would adjust it there and exclude your neighbor's area from that motion detection grid, therefore no longer getting motion recording based on that. So those are your two kind of real setting changes you can do for motion.
Hold the phone though. Am I hearing that motion detection is really based off of pixels changing? Why do they even call it motion detection then?
Good question.
If you think about it, a tree waving in the wind is in fact motion. It is something moving. And an advanced analytic that determines like if somebody is crossing a line or entering and staying in an area, you know, like some of our VCA things, they're very helpful at figuring out when something meets that criteria, but they're not necessarily going to accomplish every goal that you're going to have. So let me tell a funny story. We have, you know, as part of our new platform Surveil, we have this analytic that tells if there's people. But we had, it wasn't a person, it wasn't a vehicle, and it was definitely a thing that came onto, you know, the property, but it was a bear. And so it's, you know, that's not a person. It shouldn't be recognized as a person within the analytics. It's definitely not a vehicle, but I still need to know about it. You know, they could have damaged the property. And so you want to still have this sort of other category. And that's really where, you know, motion is super valuable. It's something's moving. We're not necessarily saying what it is, you know, but it's a way of like filtering and finding the footage that doesn't fit into other places.
Gotcha.
On the flip side, though, you know, yeah, sometimes it's going to show you the bear, and then sometimes it's going to show you, you know, for example, if you have it in a indoor environment where usually motion detection does pretty good, because there's a little less noise, there's not bugs going in front of it, which you deal with at night with motion detection. But usually you don't have that indoors. But for example, you know, what detects as motion when indoor for indoor environments is turning on and off the lights. That completely changes the pixels on the camera from these are pretty dark right now to very bright, and then that sets off a detection. You know, cameras are getting a little smarter as time goes on. Like the ones that have some of the VCA function can actually exclude that. They know when, okay, now too much of it's actually changing. We know it's something like the light changing, but the basic one that, you know, most people use and actually rely on doesn't have that function. So
Yeah, and there's a lot of times where somebody is not going to notice what is moving in that image. So, you know, it could be a fan on the ceiling that just ever so slightly reflects. You know, you might have removed the fan out of the way, but yet there might be a lamp that's reflecting off the fan, and that reflection of the light is going to the wall. So
the
it's like
shadow,
it's
yeah.
it's seeing, you know, something blowing or moving, or that it thinks it's moving. So, you know, things like that. And also maybe an LED on a piece of electronic that just kind of flashes every now and then. That's going to be picked up as motion.
Wow. Gotcha.
Anything that's sort of creating pixel change. You know, so
Correct.
like one of the most common things outside, you know, that creates a lot of motions is cloud coverage. You know, a cloud going in front of the sun, and then, you know, so it's going lighter and then it's going darker again. You know, that's going to create a motion event because something is changing. You know, and visually the camera doesn't know the difference. It sees something is changed about the image.
Shadows on the ground.
Yeah, so
Shadows on the ground is a perfect example of that. So yeah, you might have removed the tree out of your motion detection, but when the sun hits a certain time of the day, that tree is going to have a shadow on the ground, and the wind blows, that shadow moves.
So just, I think even just to wrap that up a little bit, light is pixel changes, light is motion to motion detection. So, you know, you wouldn't normally think about, like, for example, let's say a computer's monitor turns on as being motion, but you know, if that's going to light up the room, it's going to detect as motion. So any kind of light changes are motion to motion detection. You know, not ideal for most people, but that's a reality of that technology.
So can you set up alerts based on motion detection? Would you even want to? Sounds like you'd get a lot of alerts.
I mean, yes, honestly, I mean, I do see a use case for it. Most of the time it's going to be on an indoor camera, whenever it might be a more secure area or more of an area that you need to be made aware of something is in there. Outdoor, I would absolutely say no. I mean, in the wintertime, we have to worry about things like snow setting off motion detection. In the summertime, we have to worry about bugs setting off motion detection. And springtime, rain, fall, leaves. I mean, there's always going to be
Right.
something outside that can set off motion. Now, don't get me wrong. I do say motion is great for your recording, but use your VCA options if they're available on your particular camera for sending you a notification. Like the intrusion detection is one of my favorites. And we have another video that you can watch on that, but you know, you have a lot more control over what you get notified of.
I think an important distinction here is to talk about like why do we have a security camera, system to begin with. And we have two needs that we need to accomplish from having a security camera system. We need to be alerted when something is worrisome, potentially a bad issue, and VCA is going to fit that role a lot better than motion. But we also need to not miss anything. And when we're recording, make sure that we're recording anytime it's even possible. So consider it like a system of escalations. Like if you wanted to make sure that you never miss anything whatsoever, 24/7 is your best option. But if you want to have a little bit longer data retention, make that hard drive space last a little longer, you can filter out the stuff where there's no light changes, there's no movement, etc., and limit that down to maybe save half of your recording space. That'll save a lot, and it'll lower your costs and the hard drive costs of getting a security system substantially. But you don't want to miss anything. So motion is there as sort of a fail-safe, make sure that I never miss when something is of concern. And VCA is really what you want to use to give you, video content analysis is really what you want to use when you want a good alert that is meeting a criteria.
And just to kind of build off of what Matt was saying about how you're recording, you can still record 24/7 and have your motion events be seen by the camera, and it'll put a little marker in your 24/7 recording that motion happened here. So it'll show blue as your 24/7 recording, and then red as when a motion event happened. And then you can even say, add a tag for this VCA event, which I believe that one's purple. James might correct me on that one, but I believe it is purple.
Yeah.
So you can see, that VCA event happened at this time on the timeline. So if you are a person who does need to record 24/7, awesome. The camera and the NVR are going to help you find where an event happened because of the other settings that you have already set.
I think going back even a little bit further when we're talking about motion, you talked about the snow, everything like that. And that's all true for sure. So one of the things you have to evaluate when it comes to if you are considering doing any kind of notifications is the scene that the camera is looking at. Maybe you could get away with a motion detection camera if it's in a tight area and kind of that it's, yeah, you're probably going to get some false notifications. But if you can control like a varifocal camera, it's probably going to be a better pick for those because you can set specifically, okay, I want to see the doorway, not necessarily everything else that's in between it. So you can have a greater area to look at, or a smaller area to look at, so you can just see that doorway instead of the light over here. And the light, it definitely can help in that regard too. And that's why the indoor ones, generally are a lot better with notifications because if you have it in a secure room like a closet or something that nobody should be in, the light's not turning on and off all the time. It's going to only detect when something actually is happening in there that you may want to know about. So yeah, just to kind of go back and talk about what you're seeing, it matters. And a general surveillance camera, a big wide one that you're going to put on the side of buildings, not usually the best case for motion detection alerts.
But on the flip side, something like a server room, or where you expect to always have the lights on, always have the server running, something like a data center, fantastic application of something like motion detection for an alert.
Yeah.
Nobody should be in here. If there is some sort of motion that's happening, I need to know about it quickly. And I've got a really stable environment with consistent lighting and limited access, etc. This actually could work really well for getting an alert based on motion. But on the flip side, like the vast majority of time, especially with the way that we typically advise of like putting cameras near your entry points and outside and watching access for how can somebody intrude into the building, not going to be tremendously effective from an alerting perspective. You probably want to have some sort of additional analytic on top of that. That's giving you the alerting function that you need. But from the perspective of like a business owner, you can't miss anything. You have to be able to record, any time that there's activity. You need to be able to record that, have it. So if you requested it, or if the police are involved or HR is involved, you can absolutely say, "Whoops, I guess the analytic didn't detect that happened today."
I think that brings up one of the best questions when I when it was doing pre-sales all the time, like one of the first questions they get is motion actually sensitive enough? And I'd have to pretend I'm not chuckling on the other line, and be like, of course, yeah, 100%. It's trust me, it's going to be very sensitive. It's going to detect anything and everything if you keep that sensitivity very high. But most people assume it's going to miss things because, you know, it's not like as we mentioned, this is a digital enhancement. There's nothing physical within that camera that's doing any kind of motion detection. So there's no passive infrared, a PIR sensor within there that's, if you cross it the wrong way, it's not going to set off. A lot of people see their motion lights on their house and they think, oh, that one works maybe 50% of the time. I sometimes have to go like this in front of the screen or in front of it and to make it turn on the light while I'm walking my dog. And they think that's probably going to be very similar, but in reality, it's totally different. And it is very sensitive. The only, I would say 99.9% of the people we talk about with motion detection, they want to lower down the sensitivity. So just as a, good clarification there.
That's good.
And it is one of those things that once you set it, don't forget about it. Check your recorded footage in a couple of days just to make sure that you are picking up, or maybe you're not picking up, what you're looking for. So edit your sensitivity, edit your grid. It's very worth it.
That's awesome.
And you can do that in steps. Sorry. So like he's saying, like, don't go from 100, which is the max sensitivity, down to 10 in one big drop, because then you may be potentially be missing some things. So imagine somebody's just walking straight to the camera and they're like 100 feet away and they're walking in at 100 sensitivity. Maybe and every camera's gonna have based on the lens and resolution and everything like this. So there's a very broad thing. So don't quote me, please. But somebody detects it at 80
You're
feet
on video.
away.
That's what the point of this is
I'll
to
edit
quote
it.
you.
I'll edit it. No, again. But if somebody's 80 feet away and is detecting it at 100 sensitivity, it may only detect them once you set it to 10 at 20 feet away. So that kind of brings up one of the key things I don't think we talked about yet is the pre and post record setting for motion. So
Well, before we jump into that real quick, James,
yeah.
let's talk about the distance, because you just said
yeah,
sensitivity plays with distance, and we've got some cameras that can see really far. And walk me through that. If I got a camera that sees 1,000 feet away, can I get motion detection 1,000 feet away?
It's a good question because everything's relative to the camera, right? So why does it detect a hornet flying next to the camera? Hornet bug that big, that's not a big item, but when it gets in front of that camera and it's taking up 80% of the view, that's a huge object to that camera. And that's the same thing you got to think about as a person. How big is that person within that view? Is he 10 pixels wide? Is he, 50 pixels wide? And the bigger it is, the more likely it is to detect motion. So the further away somebody is, the more difficult it is going to, be for it to detect it's actually motion. That's going to become noise because it's such a small object within the scene. So it's going to depend on, are you having a 4K camera? That's probably going to be able to detect better than a 2 megapixel camera if they're at the same lens. But then if you have a lens that's zooming in, gets into a very big, deeper conversation about, being able to see things from distance. At that point, you really need to look at the lens over the resolution. So if you are trying to see somebody 400 feet away, you need to grab one of our PTZs or our, Archer camera or the sharpshooter camera, put it on your building and zoom in. And otherwise you're just it's not going to detect even at 100 sensitivity at that kind of distance away.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like we get asked that a lot, so that's good. Thanks for clearing that up.
Play with the settings, make it work for you.
Yeah. But can I go back to the pre and post record?
Please tell me all about this.
All right. The way motion recording actually works is it detects, and then it's actually the NVR is actually constantly recording. So it goes back on the constant recorded footage and says, okay, we don't need this, and this, and it kind of scrubs it away. So it has the ability to actually go back in time before the motion initially is detected and grab up to 60 seconds of footage before it. So, that way, if that person's walking towards you and did something 80 feet away that you didn't quite catch, the motion detection Pre-record is actually going to grab that last 60 seconds of footage if you just set it to 60 seconds. So, number one, obviously, as we're
Let me
Go ahead,
interject and pause here because I think there's somewhat of a distinction difference between the videos like the cameras you might see that are consumer based. So they usually have a PIR sensor. PIR sensor, passive infrared. It doesn't turn the camera on until it detects motion. So it's got this little like almost like an alarm motion detector inside the camera, and then it starts recording when it detects motion. That's the way that like Ring or any of those sort of consumer cameras work. So what motion detection does in this paradigm for a consumer grade product is it turns the camera on when it finds motion. This is not what a business class product is. What a business class product does is it records all the time, and then it determines the motion filter to function kind of like a garbage collector. What video can I go delete to maximize your storage so that you only have to retain the data that matters to you? And this has huge benefits. So first off, you can get, like James is talking about, pre-recording. So you can say like, hey, if motion occurs at 1 minute and 30 seconds in, and I said, give me 10 seconds before that, it keeps from 1 minute, 20 seconds in. It can do that without a problem because it isn't it isn't turning on when it detects motion. This is way different than the sort of consumer grade product, which doesn't even fire up the camera, usually because that's battery powered. You want to save the battery. It doesn't even turn the camera on until it finds that motion. This is a business class product, and so it does something very, very different.
That's a great distinction. Yeah.
Mhm.
And the people who the PIR sensor is again what we're talking about with probably your motion lights are set up by, and that's the one that sometimes you have to go, hey, I'm here. And that's why there's a lot of that skepticism when we talk about motion detection, because there is the assumption that it's based on that, and that the cameras, are going to turn on, like you're saying. If the cameras are constantly streaming, they're constantly live with our professional grade stuff, and the recording is constantly until it realizes it no longer needs it. So.
Good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and just to add real quick, the post recording and pre-recording is set at 10 seconds by default on motion. So you can, I believe, like James said, you can go up to 60 seconds, so 1 minute on the pre-record, and I believe it's up to 5 minutes on the
Yeah.
post-record.
Yeah, and that's so that's customizable, and that's on a per camera basis too. So you may have specific cameras where you go, this one's a really important camera. I really want to make sure that I'm getting the maximum. And actually, even just to go back even a little bit further, every camera has its own record schedule period. So you can set one camera to motion and then one camera to outside. So if you really are, I need this camera 24/7, I really can't take that risk of missing anything, and you can turn it on constantly, still use that motion detection like Michael said earlier, and then have another camera that's just set on motion only. So that is on a per camera basis as well as the pre and post record. So if you have a camera that you need to adjust the pre or post record, you can do it just for that one camera. You don't have to do it on all of them.
Yeah, and just to add into that as well, the schedule will allow you to set a hour by hour schedule and day by day. So we have a lot of schools that they'll set a full-time recording during school hours and then motion only after and before school hours. So that way they're saving a ton of hard drive space for the downtime and over the weekends. But just in case somebody is in there, it's going to pick it up because motion is going to pick up that movement of somebody actually being in the school. But yeah, during the school day, usually for safety, it's recording that entire time.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Talk to me about like resetting. Does it have to reset if there's like motion going on for an hour? Does it take that whole hour clip or?
Oh no, yeah. If something's moving in front of it, it's going to record. Okay. We have people all the time who call in saying, "Hey, I don't see anything happening," but when we look at the footage, it's a solid red line, and it's showing a tree blowing in the wind because they had a stormy day. And that tree, unfortunately, was not removed out of the grid. So that tree just going, it's solid red line. It's hard to find anything in something like that.
Right.
Let's talk about that again, going again, like to where are people getting this idea of like it needs to reset? They're getting it again from this sort of consumer grade camera. So let's talk about like I'm sitting on my porch and I own a consumer grade camera and it's on my front door. And I'm out there and I'm sipping a cup of coffee. What's going to happen to that camera? Well, that camera has got a battery that's, let's say, rated for a year, like your Eufy products. And if I sit out there in front of that camera and I drink a coffee for an hour, it's not going to be rated for a year anymore. It's suddenly just burned through an hour worth of recordings. When it says it's rated for an hour, it's expecting like, hey, 3 times a day, somebody's going to come in and out. The mailman's going to come at some point. So I'm going to have 4 recordings at 30 seconds each. And so these consumer grade products usually have this sort of refractory period where they can't record again. And this is designed so that you don't record yourself sitting, having that cup of coffee and run out of battery and have to change your battery all the time. So it doesn't record a new clip for a huge time. And this is how you end up with, something like a year worth of battery. It's a complicated product that has to record something. And that's one of the most battery intensive things you can do. And it's basically got a little laptop battery, lithium ion battery in it. And so in order to maximize that battery life, you have to create this time period where you stop and say, hey, I just recorded, don't record again for X time period. And usually within the UI of these battery powered cameras, you can set that, you can set it bigger or smaller. But a business class product doesn't have that need at all because it's already powered. So, if it has 24 hours of straight motion, let's say you're recording a river, well, it's going to have both motion the whole time. It's always moving. And it'll just stay on the whole time and it'll have, hour long or 24 hours of pure motion. And that's what you got. And that's one of the advantages of this sort of business class product is it doesn't have those limitations that we're used to within consumer grade products.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
And actually, even to kind of, there is kind of when you're asking about, I guess, kind of like a reset time or something like that, that does actually, even in the professional cameras, kind of go into effect a little bit because you're talking about the post record. So imagine somebody is in front of the camera and then, they go away from the camera for the post record, as we said earlier, 10 seconds by default. They go away for 11 seconds. That clip is now stopped. That is now a complete clip that, that's all you're going to get. If you're only recording on motion, that's all you'll see. If he goes back into there and 5 seconds later, that's going to be a brand new clip. So it's going to create multiple clips for that kind of one clip. So one incident, I should say. So you'll have multiple clips for that. Now, if they're constantly on that camera and it's constantly detecting motion, it's going to be, let's say that person's in front of this camera for 5 minutes, then you're going to get 1 5-minute clip out of that. Of course, you can clip, in segments if you want to, but if you are pulling a full clip and they keep going in out of the camera, in the camera, out of the camera, in the camera, you may end up getting multiple clips out of that. So sometimes increasing the post record can help in that situation to kind of take it from a different perspective.
Nice. That helps clean things up a little bit, I think. I had one more question. Earlier, we talked about being able to like filter through recording with using the motion, down at the bottom of the scroll bar. Is there a way, like if I know that motion took place in this camera, but in a certain area of the camera view, I didn't want to see the other area, can I search for stuff like that? Or you mentioned a little bit about like the grid blocking. I don't know if that has to come into play, but I was just curious.
So yeah. One of my favorite little underrated features is the smart event playback. So this is available on a couple different UIs. I usually do it on ViewStation mostly, but basically what that is it knows where the motion being detected within, based on probably a file or something like that. But anyway, you draw the grid after the fact. So if you didn't set up the grid, which most people honestly don't, you can still go back and draw a certain area, kind of adjust the sensitivity, and then do a search based on that. So if you had an incident and you're really not sure when it happened, you just know it's in this certain area. Hey, when did somebody grab this box? And you can go back and you can draw it around the box and then do a search, and it's going to further narrow down what you actually have to review in order to actually see, okay, yep, at 3 o'clock, somebody moved the box. So that is a feature that's standard on our NVRs as well.
Nice. And you'd have to have motion recording set up to be able to use that feature.
I do believe you have to have it on. I'm not sure, I don't think for example, if you do exclude part of the grid, I think it still is technically putting it in a file to detect there. But actually, let me go back a little bit. So if you are recording only on motion still, and you want to go back and see when something was in that area where there wasn't detecting motion, that clip may be completely gone. So it's not going to be able to bring back footage from the dead like that. But if there is already something in that area and it was already recorded, it can detect based on that, if that makes sense.
Definitely does.
Yeah, and on the smart search, I find it best when something has been added or removed from that camera's image to, where was that particular item? Okay, let me box that off. And it's really easy to find the footage for, that particular event because something was added or removed. It's usually pretty simple to find that way as well.
Nice. Bruce stole my sandwich again. Come on, Bruce. Jeez. Bruce, if you're listening, sorry. Come on. Stop stealing sandwiches. Awesome. No, I think that's super helpful. I think it's great if used in the right ways, and especially used in conjunction with other features that the cameras offer.
Yeah,
That's great.
I should mention that we do have that full video on intrusion detection, but all of our cameras by standard, I think maybe besides the fish eyes, which are a different story, which I also have a video on. But all of them standard support intrusion detection. Some of our 8 megapixel ones, and you can ask us and we'll give you which ones support what, but also can support it based on detecting a person or a vehicle within the intrusion detection area as well. And most of our cameras support line crossing, which is another analytic. So these are generally better for getting notifications with, because there's a lot more, you get a lot more grounds to specify what's there and sensitivity options and different
A lot more
parameters
control.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you going to have links to all the videos below?
We will. Yeah.
Awesome.
You heard it here first, folks. Links to all the descriptions in the video below.
And if we conclude, like the way I would frame motion detection, it's awesome. And I think a lot of people, when they rely only on motion detection, get a little disappointed, and it's because, and then we can introduce those analytics, of course, but it's because it's amazing at being able to save hard drive space. So saving that money, getting half the hard drives that you necessarily might need if you're using console recording. It makes it a little easier to find through footage. Of course, you're going to have some noise with motion detection. It's not all going to be clips, but it's definitely a lot better than having to sit there and look at 24/7. So, and then, like, I think my favorite example we heard about was Michael's when he's talking about the schools. Like, that's the same thing for businesses. A lot of businesses know 9 to 5, they're going to have people in and out. They don't really need to, they prefer recording constantly during that time, but then, after hours, nobody should really be there. So they can just save that hard drive space and, or, on weekends if they're not open. So, that's the way I would kind of frame motion detection.
I think some of our office cameras, even here in the office, are set up that way as well. Maybe the radius is.
Yeah.
It's just a great way to conserve. You may not realize how much hard drive space you're saving until you actually do it.
I think one of the big distinctions that you need to make anytime you're dealing with any sort of computer vision or video analytics of with motion detection is the most core piece of, it's like the most basic building block of any of those things, is that you need to pick the right tool for the right job. So for example, there's a huge scuttlebutt in the US with people reacting to facial recognition. Facial recognition, fantastic at figuring out, does my employee who just used the key card match the face of the person with that key card? Did somebody steal their key card? Great solution for that. It's not a very good solution for figuring out which one of 6.8 billion people on the planet committed this crime, because a lot of us look alike. And so having the ability to choose when you have all these video analytic options, such as intrusion or motion detection, line crossing, you need to pick the one that's the right tool for the right application. Motion detection is the perfect tool for making sure you get your maximum from your hard drive space. It's not a super great tool at getting you an alert. It's not a super great tool for figuring out, does this matter to me from a security perspective? Do I need to call the police? It's not the tool for that. It's a great tool for saving you hard drive space so that you can increase the amount of data retention for the dollar that you spent on your hard drives. And using it that way, you're going to have really good results with it. Relying on it to send you an alert every time that somebody moves or anything moves, is gonna not give you a great result. It's not the right tool for that job.
I think even
Did-
to add on just a little bit more, is some people who maybe haven't experienced motion detection might go, well, I don't mind getting a couple of notifications from that aren't quite what I care about. But the truth is, I mean, you're going to get hundreds of notifications throughout the course of a day if you're on a general surveillance camera outside. And you know, eventually you may be able to stick up with that, depending on how many cameras you have, how much time you want to spend on looking at those notifications. But for most people, eventually that all becomes noise. And so even though you're getting notifications, you're no longer responding to it. It's kind of like,
The boy who
whatever,
cried
boy
wolf.
cried wolf. Yeah, basically. And, so eventually you just stop looking at those notifications. And, that's why, just for anybody who's kind of wondering, oh, why is it such a bad idea to get all these notifications? You really want to make sure the information you're getting to you is important. And it's not, the wind change, the sun went over or the cloud went over the sun and you got a notification. You don't care about that. So you want to make sure that you're getting proper information at all times.
We ran a test one time here where we turned on notifications for the system that we have in this property. And again, we have 2 buildings. We've got a residential renter. We've got some Airbnbs on campus. We've got 10 commercial tenants that are directly underneath me. And we had at the time, pre-COVID, everybody was in the office. We had something like 25 employees here. And we had within a month's time period, something like 200,000 notifications. Just letting it rip roar going as crazy as it wanted to. And then a lot of that's because when you have a business, like people are here all the time and they're moving and they're making events. And this is what James means by sometimes it feels like it's crying wolf. Like, I don't need to know about all of those things. Like, all right, Ben's at his desk. Okay. So having a different tool such as intrusion detections for your sensitive areas or line crossing, or having these notifications run only during the hours when you're closed, those sort of things they will do a lot at increasing your sanity in trying to figure out the system. You still need to record 24/7. I need to know, during Ben's performance review, is he here? Is he doing work? But I don't need to be notified all the time. So the idea of like the notification and the recording, we should split those concepts a little bit.
And just to kind of add on to that, there are times where the support team will speak with customers and they will say, I definitely want this, and we're more than happy to set it up for them, but we will give them our honest opinion on, you're going to call me next week and turn this off, because it is going to just be so many. Also one other thing that people also need to look at, if you set up your notifications to come to you through your email, depending on how many notifications your system is sending, you might max out your total email sending for the day. So that's something else to also look at.
Sorry.
Yeah, most email providers will have a daily limit. You can only send out X amount. I don't know exactly the number. And then you'll also have a monthly limit too. So you can only send out, and people with those kind of noisy alerts are definitely going to hit those. And we've had customers hit them and all of a sudden it just stops and they go, oh, some of the system's wrong. And it's Gmail, they're thinking you're spamming people. So,
but
right.
Honestly, if somebody does want that set up, more than happy to help, more than happy to get that set up for them, because there are some cases where people do need that. And I'm more than happy to help them do it, as long as they take, our warning. You're going to get a lot, a lot. When I say a lot, I mean a lot. We have one customer, I believe she was receiving minimum 400 emails a night because she lived in a warm climate and insects were a thing. So 400 a night, and I would throw my phone away. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the limit on a paid account in Gmail is 10,000 per day, and a free account is significantly lower than that. So this can be a problem. But honestly, if you're sending that many notifications to begin with, there's no real way to review them, and that's the whole point of this. You should be getting an alert when it matters, not setting up to get so many alerts. This is an
Yes.
excellent tool to decide when I record, and not an incredible tool, especially outside, to decide when I get an alert.
And I think it's important to cover that stuff because I think a lot of people have experienced that. Have experienced tossing up motion, hitting the notification bell and regretting it later. So I'm curious, I'm going to ask the audience, let us know in the comments below the total number of notifications you've ever had. The winner, we'll send you something a little special from SCW. So that'd be super cool.
Ooh,
But
what are they gonna get? I might want one.
surprise. Probably an autographed copy of our catalog. I'm just kidding. It'll be some t-shirt or something. We'll figure it out. But let us know in the comments below. How many total notifications have you gotten from accidentally setting up motion notifications? Super curious on that. I think that does it for today. Unless we're missing something big, I think we covered it all. When to use it, when to apply it, when it makes the most sense, what it actually means.
Oh, I do have something I might want to add. In the trigger action section of your motion recording, so whenever you're setting up your motion, you can set a trigger action for that particular camera to start recording on other cameras as well. So if you have two cameras or maybe more looking in the same area, you can actually have that one camera tell others to record just in case they kind of get the same area. So that I've set that up quite a bit here recently. Just to kind of throw that out there as a extra feature, I guess, that the motion can do. Oh,
Yeah.
one other thing. I have one other thing. Sorry.
Keep it coming,
Another
Michael.
trigger action
Come
that
on.
you can do is you can set a motion event on a camera to trigger a PTZ to go to a certain preset. That is fun. That is super fun. I like that one a lot. I think we use that one here.
Well, you can set it, so that's where, actually, the only way I've set that up, and I would be a VCA, because like we did it with the line crossing one on that PTZ, like the line cross, PTZ went over because a vehicle crossed that line. I don't want every time motion there. It can happen, but that's again, probably another place where I'd say a VCA is a better option. But actually going back to that recording multiple cameras, the way I've seen that typically done is, somebody will have an exterior camera right on top of their door, and they want that camera to trigger the inside one that's looking down the hallway because they were trying to get more of a complete look at them as they open the door and everything like that, and as they walk down the hallway. You could probably get something similar with the pre-record too, but in this case, that's how the customer wanted to set it up, and that's what we did.
Nice. Right on. Well, I'm sure we could probably go on for a couple more hours if I just kept asking you what more. So I think that's a good place to stop for now. We've got some links to view past videos in the description below, so make sure you check out those for intrusion, some of those panoramic cameras that were mentioned. And then of course, all the resources will be linked below as well. Feel free to reach us on the website. You can always contact us there as well. As Michael mentioned, support's happy to help, sales is happy to help, James and Tech is happy to help. So we're super excited. Make sure you tune in next week. We're gonna have an exciting one for you. Thanks so much for joining us today. See you later.